Hello and welcome back, fellow Fantasy Standard stands. We're here in week 4 finals with Jeremy on Grixis Reanimator and Michael on Naya Heroic. We have both players mulliganing to 6, and we're leading off with Savannah from Naya Heroic. Now, Naya Heroic, they play creatures that get pumped every time a non-creature spell is cast or they're targeted, and then we play a lot of pump spells to just swing for a lot of damage out of nowhere. Meanwhile, Jeremy's Reanimator deck wants to put a big fatty in the bin and then bring it back right out for really cheap. We've got Adorned Pouncer, 2 mana 1/1 double strike that can come back for 5 mana from the graveyard. And then on the other side, Jeremy, Demonic Tutoring. Now, they had 2 mana last time with the Mox, so maybe they're revealing some information that they drew the tutor for turn. Either that or they wanted to hold up a removal spell, like a lightning bolt maybe, to make sure they didn't just get one shot on turn 1. But fetching up this Mox Sapphire completes all the mana that they would need for the rest of the game, and leads into an Ancestral Recall. We hit our second land drop, and it looks like with the Ancestral, we drew our Lotus. A couple different lines of play here. We could Lotus out of Karn. We could Lotus into Wheel. Because we don't exactly want the Shieldred in our hand, but... So we're cracking the Lotus. Looks like we cracked it for black to cast Angrat's Rampage. Jeremy really respecting the huge burst potential from this Naya Heroic deck. But Naya Heroic will respond with a Lotus of their own into Burning Prophet. Notably couldn't do it the other way around to get that Scry trigger because Michael's actually hurting for some red mana. And Jeremy's going to see that weakness here. And just clear the board. Don't want to deal with any of your dudes. And yeah, this is exactly where Jeremy wants to be. Got rid of the early aggression. Now has a Karn on the field. We're going to uptick. Interesting, after not really seeing any threats from Michael. Could downtick and win over the course of 2 or 3 turns with Time Vault and such. But instead, we're content to keep upticking Karn. You know, so long as Karn is up, we can't get surprise moxed and have some explosive 10th District Legionnaire turn. Jeremy continuing to develop their hand. And that's exactly what we were looking for from the Reanimator side. This Champion of Wits is going to be able to get rid of the Shieldred in our hand. And with 2 Animate Deads, going to be able to get that out next turn. Didn't find another mana source to be able to Animate Dead this turn. But next turn, it's going to be very powerful. Second Burning Prophet out on the field. Not going to be able to do too much on its own. Just hoping to stick around for a little bit. But with Shieldred coming back, there's nothing Michael can do to save the Burning Prophet. And that's going to be game 1 going to Grixis Reanimator. Heading into game number 2, we have our sideboards unlocked. Both players kept a hand of 7, and we've got a turn 1 threat out on the field, powered out by Mox Ruby from Naya Heroic. But we'll answer with triple Mox from the Reanimation side into a Black Lotus, you know, just casual. We're gonna be real casual about it. Welcome to Season Power 9, folks. Now, what can Jeremy do with all this? Apparently not too much. Looks like they had a wheel in hand, but decided against casting it, holding up a recoil in their hand instead. But Savannah in play for Heroic. We're going to cast a Furnace Scamp. 1 mana 1/1. When it deals combat damage to a player, you can sacrifice it to deal 3 more damage. Got the Burning Prophet kicking in. Deciding to tap a Plateau for Defiant Strike. We get a Scry trigger. And +1/+0 on the Burning Prophet. Don't like that card. Let's ship it away. Defiant Strike resolves. They draw a card. Looks like before damage, we're going to recoil that. Jeremy maybe trying to bait out some more aggression. Not casting the recoil while Defiant Strike was on the stack. And we've got a Chancellor of the Annex in our hand. So we could hard cast that if we get another mana source, but it looks like we have different plans. We're going to float 3 red off of Black Lotus, use one of it and probably this Mox Jet. Just clear the way. Won't let Heroic have any creatures on the field. And this leads me to believe, yep, that we're going to Wheel of Fortune as well. Getting rid of a bunch of pump spells from Heroic's side. Now we did not hit an Animate Dead, so not going to be able to bring back that Chancellor that we just threw in the bin. But we'll just pass the turn with our land drop. Holding up this Consign to Oblivion in case Michael decides to go for it all. But the Burning Prophet is back. And we're going for a tempo play here. Essentially a time walk, undo the previous turn, and this will give Jeremy all the mana that they'll want to use on this turn. And casting Oblivion, discarding 2 cards, recuperating some of that symmetrical effectiveness of the Wheel of Fortune. Burning Prophet can't stay away. It is persistent. We're going to keep trying it. Four mana, Karn, the Great Creator. Turns off that Mox Ruby. A little dangerous maybe to downtick Karn here, so uptick, pop that Ruby. But looks like we're not going to. Just uptick on nothing. Six mana from the Heroic side. Unusual to see this much amount. They don't run too many mana sources. We've got a second Burning Prophet joining the ranks. And we'll get in there, Karn. Looks like Karn might not be long for this world. We've got 2 Scry triggers, a pump trigger on this Prophet. So we've got a 5/6 Prophet right now. And we just want to unlock that Ruby, so we'll send an extra 3 damage Karn's way. Pass the turn. 7 mana. Gonna hard cast that Sheoldred, the one that carried us to victory last game. But a swift response from from Naya Heroic. Swords to Plowshares on Shieldred. That's one of the cards they get from their sideboard. Heroic can often do just copious amounts of damage, and the life gained from swords isn't going to matter too terribly much. But let's see with a clear board what this Heroic deck can do. We've got another Giant Growth. An extra 2 damage, extra 5 damage. So 7. 1 mana deal 5 seems pretty good. Scry 2 to the bottom. We don't need any more lands. Looks like Jeremy's bringing back the Annex. So maybe we will need more lands. Every spell costing a little bit more can add up when you're trying to storm off. Earthshaker Kenra hits the field. A little too small to make everything unblockable, but sending everything in. Gonna get 3 damage in. Every point matters. But notably, wanting to probably get that Kenra dead, because then you can swing for a big attack next time, making sure the Chancellor can't block. Animate Dead, not just a pure reanimate, it actually gives the creature -1 power, which is very relevant here because Earthshaker Kenra embalming back will be a 4/4. And so, because Chancellor currently has 4 power, that won't be able to block. Going for a Despise, peeking at a Mutagenic Growth from Michael's hand. Perfect information, and passing the turn. Notably, Embalm or Eternalize is not a casting, so it doesn't have to pay 1 more from the Chancellor. And here, yeah, we see that play. Gonna get 5 more points of damage across. And the damage is really piling on now. Notably, if that Mox had been popped by Karn, then Earthshaker Kenra wouldn't have been back here. We've got a full attack. We've got a block on the Kenra. Knowing about this Mutagenic Growth, maybe we've got some tricks up our sleeve. And looking like pushing some damage. Mutagenic Growth on the Burning Prophet. Looks like we're paying 1 more, as the Chancellor trigger is pointed out. So we've got 4 damage pushing through right now with the Prophet. Would put Jeremy down to 7. Lightning Bolt on the Chancellor. We're counting up damage. But it looks like we have some confusion on what was being blocked. Jeremy announcing that they're blocking the Kenra, but Michael believing that the Chancellor was blocking the Burning Prophet. And looks like these 2 players are communicating, trying to figure out how this is going to resolve. We've got our on-site judge, Judge Eric, making sure that we can resolve this as close to how it should have been. And yeah, Michael seeing the pushing forward of Chancellor and fronting the Prophet, thinking that the Prophet was the one being blocked. Looks like they were pumping up the Prophet so that it wouldn't die, and instead the Kenra would get through. But how we ended up resolving this was changing the targets from Mutagenic Growth targeting the Kenra, and lightning bolt targeting the face. And that's the game. 1-1. All right, we're in game 3 of the finals between Grixis Reanimator and Naya Heroic. We have Jeremy on the play, and both players mulliganing down to 6. And Jeremy will start us off. Really making sure to pick the right land to give themselves the most flexibility. Looks like I saw a Lightning Bolt and Ancestral Recall in their hand, so they can either develop their hand or answer a threat from Heroic's side. We've just got a Plateau and Pass. So Ancestral, drawing 3 cards. Did we draw an Animate Dead? No. And we don't have any big fatties either. A cool line of play would have been to sandbag a land drop and bin a fatty and then Animate Dead, but did not have this option available to us. And we've got a Lightning Bolt on 10th District Legionnaire, but this is going to be blown out by a Mutagenic Growth. Just because you don't have any mana doesn't mean you don't have any response. This Mutagenic Growth is going to put a counter on the Legionnaire, scry 1, and make it a 5/5 to eat the bolt and still keep going on. But Angrath's Rampage can't save the Legionnaire now. Another Plateau. Going for an Arcanist. Shripe River in hand. We have our creatures we want to reanimate, but we just need to find that Animate Dead. So there we go. Champion of Wits doesn't block the Arcanist very well, but can prevent them from Heroic just one-shotting with Berserk and everything. But we've got a Black Lotus in hand. And Karn as well. But really tanking on what to do here. There's the Black Lotus. And we're just going to pass the turn. Looks like we're holding up Consign to Oblivion in our hand. And Heroic answers with a Lotus of their own. Powering out Earthshaker Kenra. Champion of Wits can't block. Jeremy probably really happy that they didn't run out that Karn, as the Champion of Wits wouldn't have been able to save it. We've got Defiant Strike on this Dread Horde. The +1 power not going to mean too much, but the card advantage is what we're worried about here. And so bouncing their Arcanist means that Defiant Strike will fizzle. We won't be able to flash it back this turn. We're going to use the 1 mana floating from our Lotus to redeploy the Arcanist and swing for 2. Just organizing our lands a little bit. We've got Karn and Factor Fiction in hand. And at this point, resolving a huge creature would kind of pump the brakes on everything Heroic's trying to do. Looks like we have maybe a Lightning Bolt and a Swords to Plowshares in hand from Michael, which means that it's going to be rough for anything to stick. Here comes Factor Fiction. Right, what do we get? 2 reanimation targets, a Demonic Tutor, Mystic, and Despise. putting Despise in with the tutor as Michael knows that the Despise is a not actually a card. He doesn't have any hits. And the Chancellor, very far from being cast. I don't think we have a single white source from Jeremy's side of the field. So that being in hand is the safest place for it to be. This Demonic Tutor, probably going to grab an Animate Dead. This will help stabilize the board. That Kenra, far from being eternalized, only 3 mana from Michael's side of the board. And yes, Animate Dead is the pick. Uh-oh, and it looks like we got a little trigger happy with the Despise. Because now we don't have any more black mana to play Animate Dead. And I think Jeremy's realizing that now. Nothing else to do with the mana. An unfortunate tapping of mana, leaving that play unavailable. And I think being a turn behind here is going to be devastating. We've got a Burning Prophet on the board. We're flashing back Defiant Strike. Drawing a card. Getting +1. And a Scry trigger. Scrying to the bottom and drawing off of Defiant Strike, hitting a land. And making sure we hit that 4 damage. Mox Ruby a little too late. Doesn't really help cast any of the spells in their hand. Animate Dead. Right choice to pick the Riverwinder, seeing the removal in play, but Karn can only be a distraction, as the Bolt flashback bolt with Arcanist is representing lethal here. And yet Jeremy kind of smoke screening, grabbing one half of the combo piece to maybe scare Michael, but Michael sees the line, and congrats to Michael. Both players had a great game, and Michael comes out with the 4-0 victory.